Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Smith, and I am the CEO of Association Management Center. And today I am joined by two of my colleagues from AMC. We have Julie Nemmer, who is our Vice President of Accounting and Financial Services, and Mary Beth Benner, who is a Vice President of Client Success and also an Executive Director at AMC. And we are continuing to have some conversations around a series that we began earlier this year. And it really has to do with talking to our boards and our volunteer leaders about how they navigate a variety of challenging situations that you may find yourselves in while you're serving. And today we're going to talk about the types of challenges that can occur that impact our finances and our financial sustainability. We know that throughout the year, there's a number of things that are happening that can cause us to be either up or down as far as revenue goes or expenses. And it's part of what our boards need to address and pay attention to. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and hear some stories and get some advice from our folks who do that very effectively. So with that, I'm going to ask my first question, and I'm going to invite Julie to kick us off. So Julie, I guess what I was interested in having you talk about first are what are the steps that board members should take in order to feel equipped to track and understand and be good stewards of the finances for the organization when they're serving on a board?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. I think the most important thing board members can do is really to pay attention and understand the financial performance of their organization. Key ways to do that are really just knowing where your revenue comes from, watching trends, paying attention to those things, and understanding variances from budget and prior years, just so that you know what's going on with the organization. Reserves are another thing to pay attention to. You want to make sure you have adequate reserves. We recommend 3 to 6 months for lots of reasons that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. But those reserves help you withstand difficulties and also set you up for success in the future. So, and most important, ask questions. If you don't understand, don't hesitate to ask, because it's really important that you have that base when making decisions that have a financial impact to your organization.
Great. Mary Beth, anything you'd like to add?
Just to double back on the piece about education and making sure that your boards are educated about your financial statements. So I think, there's varying degrees of comfort when it comes to looking at financial statements and budgets when you're working with boards. And I think ensuring you're providing them with the proper information, kind of the key places to look, the key numbers to look at, and really trying to filter down what are the key metrics that they should be looking at as these tough times are coming around. I think we give them so much information with detail that they can be overwhelming. So ensuring that your board is at least well informed about the financial information that they're getting and what they should be monitoring on a month-to-month basis or a quarterly basis.
Yeah, I think we've seen the tools improve as well. So hopefully all of you are, as board members, are also experiencing some ability to see things more visually in the financial reports, and also are taking time to understand what's changing quarter to quarter. So it's great. We have some wonderful staff in our finance and accounting team and also on the client team who can certainly pause. And one of the things I've noticed is some of our groups are actually pulling out the financial reports to talk a little bit more about them in a year like this, not just have them in the consent agenda, but to make sure that questions are being asked and that people feel like they have a good grasp on maybe what's changed or what's happening or what are the trends, to just make sure everybody's following along and not overly concerned about maybe the market or things that they can't have an impact on. So great. Well, I'm going to keep us moving, and I'm interested in maybe Mary Beth, you can jump in first on this one. How can boards navigate financial uncertainty and distress that occurs during the course of a year? It could be something, for example, that might be caused by a product that's delayed in its launch or maybe isn't selling in the kind of in the way that it was expected to. Maybe it's a conference that's where the registration revenue is coming in a little bit less than was anticipated. So, when you face those situations, what should a board member be focused on, or how do they manage through that feeling of just being concerned?
Well, hopefully together, the board president, the board executive committee can work really closely with the executive director and staff to again look at the tools that we have, really try to figure out what is the true issue, and always keeping in mind in the background, like, what is your mission and vision? And is this not meeting what you've agreed to do strategically for your organization? If, for instance, you hold a conference and it just doesn't turn out the way you want, and you get to the end of it, well, you had a lot of people, your revenue was not as high as you expected it to be. I think not only is it time to look at that specifically and talk about the ways you can mitigate the impact of that, but is this a sign of a pattern that maybe you haven't realized before, and going back and seeing what the trends are? And is it time to take a look at, a more global picture of the big programs that bring in revenue for your organization? And specifically when it comes to either a product or maybe a conference or an educational session, I think, again, it's time to turn back to your volunteer leaders, your content experts, and to dig a little deeper in, how did we miss the mark here? Who do we need to talk to understand better about, how are our members using these products? Why are our members coming to our meetings? What is the most value that we can offer so that we can ensure to set things up to be meeting needs and to be, hopefully something that people don't want to miss out on because it's so critical to their everyday work.
So I'm hearing you say the role of the board is really to help be a sounding board and to think about the strategy, not necessarily the operational components of it, but just to examine, what is happening that could be impacting the success or the interest that the market, in this case, our members, have towards a product. So Julie, have you seen that happen as well? And what are some of the things you've seen boards do in these situations where things aren't tracking the way that they had hoped for the current year? And how does that impact them thinking about the next year?
Yeah, I think this happens often, right? Almost every organization at some point has something that causes them financial uncertainty, and it's just part of normal business. And I think the best way to deal with it, like Mary Beth was saying, is to be proactive and be resilient in your response to these things. Forecasting and scenario planning are tools that we've used to really help boards think about these things and the financial impact for the rest of the year, and to model out like modifications that maybe can be made to help mitigate the financial impact. So those tools can be really helpful just in planning. And I think if you're prepared, if you have diverse revenue streams, if you have adequate reserves, those things help you weather something like this. And we can model out what would happen if different scenarios do happen. And I think it's really important to be set up and ready to make decisions quickly if you need to. So your structure maybe allows you to have a process for rapid decision making where your executive committee has the ability to do that, or another committee of some kind, so that you can respond quickly if needed.
Yeah, and I'm reminded as a lot of our associations are meeting with their investment advisors, when times are unpredictable, and people get a little bit panicky sometimes, right? They always remind us to look at the longer view of things. And I think the thing that's good to remember with associations is most of them have been around for a long time and have built up reserves and are very intentional about what they provide and the services that they offer, and looking ahead from towards the next year to see what you can do to have a positive impact. So good advice, and certainly very timely, since I know this is something that a lot of our boards are considering and talking about. So, well, great. I guess I want to ask just one more question, and we'll start, I guess this time with Mary Beth, just to mix it up a little bit again. What additional advice would you have for association board members related to their fiduciary role and responsibility?
I think, in some cases, don't be afraid of it, even when things are going wrong. it's one of my favorite things to work on are financials and budgets, because it is black and white. It's right there. You have all the information that you need. And so I think to really ensure that you have a good understanding of what drives the financial success of the organization. And if there are problems, to face them head on, and to, pay attention sooner rather than later, so that you're not starting a trend that's going to go in the downward spiral. So, appreciate the fact that you are working with professionals who can get into the nitty-gritty. They understand all the details in the financial statements, but we need the volunteers and the content experts to really help us figure out the best way to navigate through hard times.
Good
Yeah, and I
advice.
can add on to that and just
No,
say,
yeah,
you
go
know,
ahead.
be,
Julie, I was gonna ask. Yeah, please add
Yeah.
on.
okay, I would say just continue to be proactive and not reactive, right? Like pay attention to your organization's finances, ask questions, like I said earlier, and really diligence and good financial practices do set you up to invest in your mission, as well as be prepared for, unforeseen circumstances that might happen. So just being aware and paying attention are probably your biggest weapons to, stay in a good financial position.